Even amid the COVID-19 pandemic, schools are still preparing for a 2020 college football season. Schools took the next step in getting ready for this year, starting on Friday with the beginning of the walkthrough period. The walkthrough period essentially allows schools to, A, have 1 hour of practice each day with a football involved. Obviously, there won't be any tackling, contact, or pads, but it essentially allows for instruction between players and coaches to sort of start installing things for this upcoming year. It's also allowing 1 hour a day and up to 6 hours a week of meetings. That means team meetings, meetings with coaches, one-on-one meetings, positional meetings, the whole thing, you name it. 1 hour a day, 6 hours a week. What that essentially means is that while teams can't start going out and executing and figuring out who's going to win what position battles, like say the Georgia quarterback battle between theoretically Jamie Newman, JT Daniels, Carson Beck, Dwan Mathis, and Stetson Bennett, they can sort of start to give players concepts and actually practice them out on the field, even if it's only for an hour a day and even if there aren't any pads on. It's sort of like riding a bike with training wheels. You're not ready to take them off quite yet because the NCAA won't allow you to until August 7th for most teams. But it's about learning, hey, you move your feet up and down, this is where you go with the football, etc., etc. For Georgia, the walkthrough period doesn't begin until Sunday, due in part to Georgia's first game being on September 7th as opposed to September 5th. Because of that, starting on Sunday, Georgia can begin to go through these walkthrough periods. It can actually take the concepts that they've heard over Zoom calls for so long actually to the practice field and start going through those. They can meet in meetings to further discuss in person what these concepts sort of look like. And for no one is this bigger than the new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken. The addition of Todd Monken was big news this offseason, with many outlets calling him one of the most influential coordinator hires for this upcoming season. Monken was brought in to replace James Coley, Georgia's offensive coordinator last year, and things did not go very well for the group a season ago. It's a big reason why Coley is now the tight ends coach at Texas A&M, and Georgia has brought in two new dynamic quarterbacks, but also due in part to Jake Fromm going on to the NFL. Monken promises to bring a whole lot of things, but what those are, we don't know quite yet. We have a good idea based on his past time at Tampa Bay, Southern Miss, Oklahoma State, and even last year as the offensive coordinator for the Cleveland Browns, although he was not calling plays for the organization. In the past, Monken's offenses have been known for their deep vertical passing routes, as well as their reliance on running backs coming out of the backfield, and a strong running game as well. That all sort of seems to fit with what Kirby Smart wants to do. But again, until we actually see this on the field, we're not exactly sure what it's going to look like. Georgia didn't even get a chance to do that this spring as COVID-19 wiped out all spring practices. For a team installing a new offense, it does make things very difficult, especially for a team like Georgia that is one of the best teams in the country from a talent perspective, but does have some catching up to do to get to their elite offenses that, say, Clemson and Ohio State have. There's going to be a lot of pressure on the Georgia offense this season, along with Kirby Smart. Smart, I think, in a sense, has to get the offense right this year, or at least show improvement that he's no longer just trying to win games with defense. He has to show that he can build an offense, both from a recruiting perspective and from a national narrative standpoint, that offense can win games at Georgia. And the guy that's going to be most in charge of this, other than Smart, is Monken. These next 2 weeks for Monken are going to be baby steps into what potentially could go on to happen in August. Again, Georgia has to figure out who its starting quarterback is going to be. If one of those guys is better able to grasp through these walkthrough periods of what the offense will be and look like, it could go a long way in determining who ends up starting that first game come September 7th. But the quarterbacks aren't the only ones that have to learn a new offensive system. It's the offensive line, it's the wide receivers, it's the running backs, not to mention the offensive line themselves have a new position coach in Matt Luke, which guarantees some differences between what they were told from Sam Pittman and what Luke figures to bring to the table. We know Georgia's defense is going to be very good this year, but the biggest questions are all on the offensive side of the ball. They can start to answer some of those internally without showing the rest of the world starting on Sunday. And if things go well for the Georgia offense early, that could potentially set them up well to start the season on a strong note. Because at this point in time, they still play a very stout Virginia defense on September 7th, and then September 19th, they have to go to Alabama. And Alabama still figures to have a very good offense, and Georgia's not going to be able to win that game 10-9. They're going to have to score points, and probably a good amount of them. And if Georgia does do so, I think we're going to be able to look back and point at these couple of practices, these walkthrough periods that the NCAA has granted teams this year, as being a big reason why Georgia was able to get where they needed to on the offensive side of the ball. For Dog Nation, I'm Connor Riley.
For more Dog Nation videos, check out youtube.com/DogNation.